Hello and welcome to episode number 21 of the 1-5. I'm your podcast hostess, Tricia Louis, the self-designated tech goddess, and I'll be coming to you weekly in this audio podcast format with great edtech tools, tips, and tricks. In this week's episode, I will be talking about some Google Drive organizational tips that have helped me for over the 13 years that I've used Google Drive. In this podcast, I'm going to share tips around three main areas of Google Drive: folder first, file second, naming convention, and starred. Then at the end, I also have a few random Drive organizational tips. First up is folder first, file second. It has been my experience that if you create a folder first and then create the document inside of that folder, you're going to be better organized. If you don't create the folder first, be sure that when you're renaming the new doc, slide, or sheet that you utilize the organize function right away and put it in the correct folder. I always start from Drive instead of the individual sites of the doc's creation. Then I have my organization structure at the ready. Also, use subfolders. They are great for getting things organized. Next, we have naming convention. The most important thing is to pick a naming convention and stay with it. I tend to make my file and folder names pretty wordy because it will help when I use search in Google Drive. You can also utilize special characters in the beginning of your name to prioritize it to the top of your Google Drive. Another tip is you can use emoji in the file or folder names that give you a visual cue. Hint: don't put them at the beginning of the name. It seems to take forever for Drive to load when the emojis are in the first part of the name, so put them at the end. You might also want to think about a color convention as well. What do the colors of the folders mean to you? In our final main area, I'm going to talk about starred folders and files. Starred folders or files are a great way to organize documents, but come up with a hard limit for yourself of how many things you are going to star. Because if you star everything, it's not going to help you out at all. I keep my hard limit under 25. Then I know that the files and folders in this area are truly special, and it is a great way to get quick access to them with the starred category on the left file menu of Drive. Here are some other random Drive tips. Purge frequently. Get on a schedule and keep your Drive tidy and purge those files and folders that are no longer needed. Remember that once you put a file or folder into the trash, it will automatically be deleted after 30 days. Don't duplicate files to put in multiple folders. Add a shortcut instead. Use Shift+Z on your keyboard to make a Drive shortcut and then put those shortcuts in multiple places. Search for files in the Omnibox of Google Chrome as well as right in Drive. Speaking of search, use Drive Advanced Search. In the search bar, click the drop-down arrow, and then you can refine your search by owner, file type, date, and so many other filters very quickly. Are you worried about that shared with me area? Just don't sweat it. It's an aggregation of files. They are not your files. If you start deleting, you might cause problems for others, so just don't worry about it. And finally, make keyboard shortcuts your friend. Check out the show notes for a link to a list of Google Drive shortcuts to get under your fingers. Do you want to learn more about edtech in your learning environment? Check out my website, tricialouis.com. There you can explore my resources, subscribe to my weekly email newsletter, and contact me. And if you like this podcast, consider supporting it by going to buymeacoffee.com/TALOUIS and pledging your contribution to the 1-5. Keep in mind the information shared on this podcast may take additional clearances from your tech department to work properly in your district, school, or classroom. I have vetted all the information shared on this podcast, and it is available and/or correct on the date the podcast is originally published. But remember that services, sites, or products can change or become unavailable without a lot of notice. Thanks for listening, and join me next time for another episode of the 1-5.